Do you know what's the biggest problem with fantasy books? A lot of people will actually say it's the farm boy chosen trope, but that's actually not modern fantasy. A lot of modern fantasy does not suffer from the chosen one trope. The biggest problem with the fantasy genre today, I think, is the reality that fantasy authors are obsessed with the fantasy. They have forgotten about the story, they have forgotten about the characters, they have instead invested into the worlds, into the magic systems, and a lot of fantasy books today are obsessed with fantasy. It is, of course, the fantasy genre, and there's going to be a lot of fantasy. But a lot of books treat that as the point, where the point of a book is to tell a story. At least if it's fiction, it's to tell a story. And at the heart of a story is a human. And a lot of fantasy books in today's, in modern fantasy, have this particular problem where the authors are so obsessed and cannot seem to just look away from how awesome the world building is. This is why a lot of fantasy authors just have such ludicrously insane worlds, where they think in order to write a good fantasy story, you need an insane world, like 300, 400, 500,000 words of world building, and then like 20, 30, 40,000 words to build your magic system, which has like 20, 40 different, facets of like using power, and it just gets out of control. And I think this muddies, and I think this clouds what is at the heart of each free story, which is the hero, the protagonist, and the human. And this is what this particular video is about. What makes the perfect fantasy protagonist? And the reason why we have to talk about this is precisely that, because fantasy authors have forgotten about the fantasy protagonist. It is sad to me, but I want to talk to you about this. And don't forget, this is a discussion. That's what I'm trying to achieve with this channel. It's not me screaming at your face and telling you what I think. It is basically both of us coming together and having a conversation and talking to each other about what we're passionate about. And that, at the end of the day, is what I want to achieve with this channel, right? And in this particular case today, what do you think makes a good protagonist? And the first trait that we have to understand actually comes from Assassin's Apprentice. A lot of fantasy in today's world is obsessed with how epic it is, right? It has a lot of different protagonists, and it has a lot of different characters, and there's all of these protagonists and switchings and plot lines and POV shuffling that is going on, right? And it is sad to me, because this has caused an issue that is underlying that Assassin's Apprentice, written by Robin Hobb, fixes extremely well. And that problem is the fact that a lot of fantasy stories are not personal. In other words, the protagonist is not well understood. And that is a big issue, because in order to write a good protagonist, you must make sure that that protagonist is well understood. Fitz, you just want to hug the guy because he is so tortured. You understand Fitz so well that you would hug him if you saw him, because you know and you understand his struggles so well. And that is, I think, what makes a good fantasy protagonist. The story should not really obsess about its magic, its world building, its 20 different protagonists that are all empty and really don't have anything meaningful to add to the story, and don't have any humanity. It shouldn't be, oh, I have 15 different POV characters, now give me an Oscar. No, because I really believe this wholeheartedly. Again, this is all my opinion. But the second thing is Kaladin and Frodo. Kaladin from The Way of Kings and Frodo from Lord of the Rings. Obviously, these two protagonists are extremely well known, extremely famous examples of what I'm going for. A lot of fantasy nowadays, when they have the protagonist, the author just does not really test the protagonist very well. In this particular case, you have Kaladin and Frodo, and they are extremely well tested. Both authors, Brandon Sanderson and J.R.R. Tolkien, take great effort to test their characters. For instance, in the case of Frodo, Frodo is tested very well by the ring, because the ring corrupts a lot of people, right? It corrupts a lot of people around him, and basically the whole world is coming to harm him because he has the ring, okay? And great evil is coming for him. And, he has to struggle, and his conviction to finish the quest is tested very well, right? Same thing with Kaladin. Kaladin believes, I'll protect those who cannot protect themselves, and he decides to protect Bridge 4. But Bridge 4 are basically expendables, because they are supposed to take bridges and put them on these chasms so that the army can cross. And so the Bridge 4 are literally the most expendable. and Kaladin has to protect them. And his conviction on his belief to protect the innocent is questioned, it is tested, and he has to hold on to this belief for dear life. And I think Brandon Sanderson does such a remarkably good job, okay? This means these two protagonists are extremely well tested. I hope that you can really understand what I'm going for here, which is a protagonist that is well, first of all, understood like Fitz, but also like Kaladin and Frodo, well tested. And then let's talk about the third issue that we have to solve here, which is, Glocta. Because when you think, or Kavoth, when you think of these two protagonists, what do you think of? Of course, you only think of them. When you think of Kavoth, you don't really think of anyone else from Name of the Wind and Kingkiller Chronicles. And then at the same time, when you have Glocta, you don't really think of anyone but Glocta. And that's the thing, right? Voice, unique style. And a lot of fantasy protagonists nowadays are basically the sarcastic, supposed to be charming, but it's really not that charming, sort of dude, and a lot of it dudes. And basically, it's really not that interesting, and it's not unique, and they seem to just blur into each other. And that is sad to me, because a protagonist should be at least unique. And that is what I'm going for here. At least have the central character of your story be unique in terms of their voice. If not unique in the genre, at least try to make them unique relative to everyone else. But let's talk about the final trait. The final trait, which is my most favorite trait. And this one is actually the most fun in my eyes, which is, and also it is the most personal. I think a lot of people can agree with me when I say a protagonist should have unique voice, a protagonist should be well tested, and a protagonist, should basically, be well understood, like Fitz, right? And a lot of people can agree with me when I say that, but I think a lot of people will not agree with me when I say a protagonist should have basically a tragic element to them. For instance, one of my favorite authors, George R. Martin, I think I would like to call this the George R. Martin factor, because I love it when a protagonist or a hero has a tragic element to them, and that tragic element, when combined with, being as well tested as Kaladin, or as well understood as Fitz, or with a unique voice like Kavoth or Glocta, you end up having an effect where we understand the struggles of this tragic hero very well, and we care about them. I really love tragic elements in protagonists, right? It's that simple. At the end of the day, this is my most personal one. And so this is a discussion. Don't forget, those are my 4 elements for what makes a good protagonist, a good fantasy protagonist, as well understood as Fitz chivalry, as well tested as Kaladin or Frodo, and with a unique voice like Glocta and Kavoth, and finally the George R. R. Martin factor, where the character has tragic elements built into them somehow. Okay, it can be in a lot of different facets. Somehow there is a tragedy. And I hope to hear from you, because, remember, don't forget, this is a discussion between you and me, and this is what I'm trying to achieve with this channel. It's basically, let's discuss about the things that we're passionate about. So, be sure to tell me what you think down in the comments below. I hope that you enjoyed this particular video, and if you enjoyed, consider subscribing and joining me on this journey where we talk about the stuff that we are passionate about, right? Have a nice day. Bye.